Hi, are you feeling signs of stress all the time? Maybe you're confused why stress persists in spite of your best efforts to manage it. If you're in stress, you're coping in one of two ways. And how you cope with stress helps you either sustain stress or recover from it. Did you know that there are two main ways that people cope with stress? Active and passive or avoidant coping. Let's look at the two types of coping with stress and which one you are using. To effectively manage stress and prevent burnout, it's important to keep stress episodes short and use active coping. When you find yourself in a stressful situation, it's natural to engage in coping behavior. If you're in stress, you are coping. It's impossible to be in stress and not cope. However, the key question is whether you're coping in a way that resolves the underlying stress or merely manages its symptoms and creates more stress. Now, let's talk about two ways to cope with stress: active coping and passive or avoidant coping. Active coping is geared towards resolving stress at its source, while many people tend to resort to passive or avoidant coping mechanisms. Let's explore the difference between active and passive coping in dealing with stress and anxiety. Active coping strategies consist of three pillars of clarity. That's how I like to look at it. Clarity about control, clarity about stressor, clarity about problem solving. Clarity about control, identifying and focusing on what you can control. This involves recognizing aspects of the situation within your control and concentrating your efforts there. Number two, clarity about stressor. This is when you acknowledge the stressor and minimize its impact, being aware of the stressor itself and taking steps to reduce its negative influence on your well-being. Number three, clarity about the problem involves active problem solving, engaging in focused problem solving, addressing the issues causing stress with a problem solving mindset. Now, let's move on to the passive or avoidant coping strategies. Their theme, on the other hand, is confusion. There is confusion control, core issues and symptoms confusion, and problem confusion. Confusion about control. People using passive coping often struggle to distinguish between what they can and cannot control in their circumstances. Passive coping involves ignoring the core issues, confusing the source of stress with symptoms and coping mechanisms. The coping mechanisms typically involve avoiding or suppressing the underlying problems, which can actually intensify stress. Sometimes these issues, deeper problems, are deep-seated emotions and unaddressed thoughts. That's what we need to go after to resolve the stress. Now, people with passive coping default into unhealthy distractions because they rely on unhealthy distractions like excessive drinking, smoking, overthinking, emotional eating to avoid confronting the real deeper issues. They engage in new problem solving. In some cases, folks resorting to passive coping may unintentionally generate new problems as a way of avoiding dealing with the original issue. That's where confusion comes in. This can hinder progress in resolving stress and may lead to a cycle of problem creation. Now, let me illustrate this with a real-life example from a client. So, this client had a sugar addiction that she wanted to overcome. When we looked closer, she realized that the addiction was fueled by a thought she had picked up in a healing class. When asked if the thought was truly hers, she realized that it wasn't. She said it was an implanted thought. So she used sugar to soothe herself and distract from that implanted thought, which had a significant impact on how she saw herself in her work identity. Many people use default coping mechanisms like drinking, smoking, in the case of this client, sugar addiction, overthinking, emotional eating, to stay in denial and avoid confronting deeper issues, which I call a source of stress. These default coping mechanisms can be helpful in pushing the pain deeper into the subconsciousness temporarily, but they don't address the source or the root causes of the stress. In some cases, people engage in casual problem creation. I see it all the time in clients. When they start resolving one issue, their mind generates a new problem almost instantly. It's as if they are stuck in a cycle of creating problems as a way of avoiding dealing with the original one. Recognizing these patterns and shifting from passive to active coping can be a powerful step in managing your stress and anxiety effectively. Now, I leave you with a question. Tell me how you manage stress. Do you mainly use passive avoidant coping, or do you use active coping? And if you want to know more about active coping, send me a DM or hit me up. Bye.